Okay, next topic I want to talk about is the subject of research. And I believe that my injury has fallen into some kind of research file or program. What I know now is the nature of my broken skull and parasite infection is extremely unusual. I went in for an x-ray at St. Vincent's East Hospital, Birmingham, Alabama, Ascension Health. For an x-ray, 2 CT scans, I had an MRI that was looked at by St. Vincent's. And, throughout this whole thing, they never would acknowledge the fact that I had parasite infection, parasite infestation, or a broken bone on the underside of my skull. Wouldn't acknowledge it. Contrary to the fact that these injuries, head trauma, they show up clearly in their images. In the paper records, you go back and you look through them. Like I would go in for an x-ray, and they would suggest in the paperwork that if I keep having pain, that I should come back to the hospital and they should employ a more detailed scanning technique. So, why would you need to do that if it's just muscle strain every time? And what becomes clear is they're getting more and more detailed information on a very unusual, very expensive, very valuable injury to them. And if they're not trying to help me, and they're not trying to correctly diagnose my injury, what are they doing with all this detailed scans and images, documentation and research on this injury? I believe that they may have it in some kind of file that they're running, keeping track of. This is basically just some kind of purely research effort. So, you go in and this happens. This information is very valuable, and this is an area that is virtually unknown, not talked about. You go to Asia or somewhere, people talk about organ harvesting. Well, okay, what's going on with me is I'm clinging on to life here, and these people aren't trying to help me; they're using me. By continuing to research this thing, but they're not sharing any of this stuff with me in any kind of useful way to me. Basically, all this stuff helps them. And I'll go into some of these attendant places. They want blood tests regularly. Why? Because they're adding it to the file. And I think they're keeping track of this thing through all these places that I go to. But we threw them a wild card in the fact that, I found out what was really going on. So folks out there with strange injuries, unusual injuries, you go into these places, get these scans, they tell you nothing's wrong with you. But otherwise, maybe you've been like me, you've gone and got your stuff and found out otherwise for a fact. Your data, it may be getting traded around like baseball cards or something by these places.